The main issue that I have, and it was reinforced last night and really on full display, is that they believe in Daniel Jones. And Shane could talk about, well, this is the year of Daniel Jones, meaning that they're going to evaluate Daniel Jones. How many times do we need to see Daniel Jones to evaluate him? And by the way, Joe, I know you're not listening because, as he said in the episode, he doesn't even know what channel sports radio is on, doesn't listen to it. Maybe you should, because we might be able to help you in certain cases here. Like Daniel Jones, for example. You may have only seen him for a couple years. I've seen him for plenty. We know what Daniel Jones is. He isn't good enough. So the idea that you, Joe Shane, and the Giants organization would give Daniel Jones $40 million a year, an extended contract for $40 million a year. Yeah, okay, maybe they could get out of it after this year. They still gave him the contract. And yet now tell us that this is going to be the year where you're evaluating him. He's at a crossroads, essentially, to figure out what he is. That doesn't make sense. Generally, you figure out where the quarterback is at, and then you give him the contract. You, Joe, did it backwards. So now the Giants have to build a team while being restricted because they're paying their quarterback that they're still not sure about $40 million a year. It's in part why Saquon Barkley isn't here. It's in part why the Giants have to piece this thing together and figure it out, because they're paying a guy that they're, in their own words, these aren't my words. My words are, I don't think Daniel Jones is any good. He fooled me once. He's not going to fool me again. They had success year one under Brian Dable. I thought maybe they got the most out of Daniel Jones. Maybe he was going to take a step forward last year. He didn't. I was wrong. I'm not getting fooled again. So my words are, I'm done with Daniel Jones. I've seen enough. I don't need 6, 7, 8 years to evaluate. I'm not at a crossroads. I'm not at a fork in the road. I know what Daniel Jones is. Definitively. The Giants still don't. So then how could you give him $40 million a year? Like, it's fine if Joe Shane and Brian Dable came in and said, you know what? We need to evaluate this guy for a couple of seasons. Then put the franchise tag on him. Or figure out a way to get him under contract for a lot less than the $40 million that you're giving him. That's a problem for trying to build a good team. As Joe Shane said last night during Hard Knocks, and if you haven't watched it, it's a must-watch if you're a Giant fan, and really if you're a football fan in general, because you'll learn a lot, especially the different variety of Hard Knocks in comparison to what it used to be. You know, the in-season one, or the training camp one. Forget the in-season one. The training camp one building up to the season. It's different. It's fun in its own right, but it's different. This is unique in that you're getting to see how team building goes in the offseason, how the front office thinks, and in this case, particular Joe Shane. But the idea that the Giants still need to evaluate a guy who this same regime, Dave Gettleman didn't give Daniel Jones the $40 million contract. Joe Shane did. So how could Joe Shane give that contract out and yet 2 years later say, or a year later now, after, the failed year last year, obviously it's year 3 with Shane and Dable and Daniel Jones, but the second year of the contract now, they gave it to him last offseason. Before the season started last season. How could he say, after giving him that contract, we need to see about Daniel if he's our guy the next 12 years, or we need to move on? How could that even be the case? You gave him the contract. That means that you believe, at least in some part, that he's the guy. And then you would say that last year's the aberration. Joe Shane goes as far as to say, oh, well, you could put Patrick Mahomes behind that line. He's not winning. Wrong. Don't ever bring up Patrick Mahomes in comparison with Daniel Jones. And I'd bet anything that I could put Patrick Mahomes behind that Giants offensive line last year, and he'd win a lot more than Daniel Jones did when healthy. Daniel Jones makes mistakes that rookies make. Daniel Jones is going into his 6th year. He shouldn't be making those mistakes in year 3, year 4, year 5, the same thing over and over and over again. Shane and Dable should have seen enough to realize what Daniel Jones was. Or if they didn't, then they shouldn't have given him the contract that they did. The contract indicated to a certain extent that they believed in their guy. It prohibited them from building a better team a year ago and again this year. So the Giants are going to take some lumps because of that. Because when you pay somebody $40 million, that's chewing up a lot of the salary cap. it better be worth it for a quarterback. And in most cases, it is. Not in the case of Daniel Jones. He isn't worth that. Now, could you win some games with him? The answer is yes. And that's not opinion, that's fact. They won games with him. They won a playoff game with him. Got to the postseason, won a road playoff game with him. That's hard to do. He did it. So you give him credit for that. But the way that they did it clearly was not sustainable. If you believed in Daniel Jones, it was because you thought he was going to take that season that they beat Minnesota on the road in the playoff game and then expand on that the following year, last year. They got weapons with Hyatt and Waller. This is going to be the year for Jones. And while he got hurt and others got hurt, Thomas being banged up on the offensive line, Neal being worthless, we know all about that. I know about his weapons being Waller being useless as well. We know all about that. However, if you watch him play in isolation, he still does dumb things that no player, especially a $40 million quarterback, should be doing in year 5 and now going on to year 6. So here we are, Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll going into year 3, kind of building a foundation, a solid foundation with the Giants organization after the slop and mess that we saw with the guys prior. Gettleman and Shermer and McAdoofus and Judd, all the above. They clean that up. You feel like, okay, it's legitimate here. At least I do with Schoen and Daboll. However, we're now going into year 3 of their regime with year 6 of Daniel Jones. And this year, again, like it was supposed to be in year 4, like it could have been in year 3, like it was supposed to be in year 4, this year again is going to be the year of evaluating Daniel Jones. When will it end? When will it stop? When will they realize he ain't it? This is it. Everything they could do to build around him, okay, fine. Not going to pay a running back or overpay a running back because you need to build the offensive line. Need to get him some weapons. Okay. I mean, they built what appears to be a solid defense. I'm excited about that. But is that putting Daniel in the right spot with the offensive line? Oh, it's going to be about evaluating Daniel Jones again. I don't care who's protecting him. I don't care who he hands the ball off to or who he throws it to. Daniel Jones himself in 5 seasons has proven to be inconsistent at best. And now we expect that in year 6, this is going to be the year of Daniel Jones. I'm not buying it. And I'm also reluctant now to buy into people that I believe in Schoen and Daboll. I'm reluctant to buy into them turning this thing around with the way that they have structured this team, allotting so much money for a quarterback that in their own words, they're unsure if he's the guy or not. BT and Sal on the Fan, our friends at Town Fair Tire. Remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. BT is off today, so it's just me and you. We'll get to the baseball later on. We start with the Giants. Matt is in East Islip. What's up, Matt?
Sal, what's up, man? Happy 4th of July. How are you?
You too, Matt. How's it going?
Good. I just wanted to touch base on the Hard Knocks thing and Daniel Jones. So, couple things. I am not a Daniel Jones supporter by any means. However, I would say to your point about evaluating Daniel Jones, I mean, you brought up all the deficiencies of the O-line, no targets, not being an excuse. But in fairness, it is. Because if you look at the Super Bowl a couple years ago, 2021, Buccaneers-Chiefs, 31-9, the Buccaneers won. Mahomes had nobody on his offensive line and got killed all night long. And even Patrick Mahomes couldn't do it. So I agree with Shane.
Mahomes couldn't win a Super Bowl. He got there. The Bengals got to a Super Bowl with a banged up offensive line. By the way, the Bucs were a great defense that year.
There's no doubt. But we all know Daniel Jones is not Patrick Mahomes, so that even increases it. And to Shane's point last night, when they played Miami, they had 3 practice squad players starting on the offensive line.
How'd they do in that game?
They got killed.
Oh, they were competitive in that game against Miami.
Because of the defense.
Oh, but still.
The defense had two
Okay, so what can happen? So you can do. By the way, Mike,
okay.
Matt, let's not make it like no team ever can overcome the offensive line issues because they do.
No, I
all
hear
the
you.
time.
I agree with you. I'm with you, but what I'm trying to say is, and who has been his clear-cut number 1 target aside from Saquon Barkley?
Say that again now. Who was his number 1 target?
Throughout his career, who has he really had?
Well, I mean, he hasn't had a legitimate number one. I understand it, but that's not the point. The point is it's him. I don't care. Oh, okay, so now it's Neighbors, right? Last year was supposed to be Hyatt and Waller, and thank you for the call. Last year was supposed to be Waller and Hyatt. This year now it's going to be Neighbors. That's great. I look at Daniel Jones and watch him play the position. He doesn't make proper decisions. It's not year one. It's not year two. We're now going into year 6. Does anybody think Daniel Jones is a $40 million a year quarterback? Please. And yet the Giants are going to try to figure out, okay, we've heard this for years with the Giants. It's the same thing. Mara's been saying it long before Shane and Dable arrived. We need to put this kid in a position to succeed. We failed Daniel Jones. We haven't put him in a position to succeed. We felt blah, 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 blah. How many years are we going to hear the same thing before everybody realizes that, you know what, maybe Daniel's the problem? I'm not even talking about his inability to stay healthy, which is a big factor, which, by the way, happens when you have a quarterback that primarily runs. And why does he primarily run? Because he can't throw it. He hasn't had success throwing the football well enough. Dable restricted and confined Daniel Jones to being a running quarterback for the most part in the most successful season that he's had. That's how they won. That's how they got to the playoffs. That's how they won a road playoff game. Last year was supposed to be the year where they opened things up. Last year was supposed to be the year, hey, now you could see what he really could do with Daniel Jones. And yet it wasn't. Why? Some will say, well, it's the offensive line. Nobody can play behind that offensive line. Some will say because of the injury. Some will just say because Daniel Jones isn't good enough. That's where I'm at. Watch him in the Seattle game on Monday night or whenever it was, that primetime game. And by the way, I was a believer in Daniel Jones going into last year. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And he proved me wrong. I'm not getting fooled again. He makes now, look, all quarterbacks make some silly plays. Daniel Jones makes some rookie decisions in year 5 going into now year 6. On top of not being ever able to stay healthy enough. So making rookie decisions, the off-injured nature, and he's getting $40 million. Daniel Jones is the primary reason. Like if you ask me one reason why I wouldn't believe in the Jets going into this year, it would be because of the head coach. And if you ask me one reason I wouldn't believe in the Giants, not only this year but moving forward, it's because of the quarterback. Steve is calling from Wayne, New Jersey. What's up, Steve?
Sal, I think your whole analysis of Daniel Jones is laughable since you last year decided that Tommy DeVito was the next franchise quarterback for the Giants.
I didn't say that. I said he was better than Jones.
That's not true.
No, it is true. You're asking me what I said or that he is? I never
That's
said.
What you said.
I never
said Tommy DeVito was the next franchise quarterback for the Giants.
No, I didn't. I never said that. So go back and check the free. No, show me the tape. Steve, you're going to laugh or have a conversation because I don't find it funny.
Well, I think it's funny because you don't have the ability to analyze them.
Steve, well, I'm hosting a show right now. You're not. So one of us has the ability. One of us does not. So tell me the point about Daniel Jones. Well, man, why don't you make a point about Daniel Jones?
Daniel Jones has played Run for Your Life since he joined the Giants.
He's played what?
Run for Your Life because
all right. So it's the offensive line, right? It's the offensive line, right, Steve?
And he has had no one to throw
Steve, you know what you should do? This has been such a good call. It's been such a good call, and clearly we need some help with some fill-ins around here because otherwise they wouldn't have asked me to do the morning show and then do my regular show. You should take this tape and send it to our boss, and thanks for the call, because really we could use some people, and you sound like you really are qualified to talk about what Daniel Jones is. Really. I'm serious. Email it to Ryan Hurley, and then maybe you could get some on airships because you're right. I'm not qualified. You, though, seem very qualified to talk about it. Number one, I never said Tommy DeVito was going to be the franchise quarterback for the Giants. What I said was, open up your ears next time and listen. What I said was, he's better than Daniel Jones, and I stand by it. He was better with the Giants a year ago than Daniel Jones was. How come DeVito could come into a game and all of a sudden utilize some of the weapons downfield? Now, obviously, his game is not without flaws. I mean, clearly, he's not a starting quarterback in this league at the moment. Could he be given an opportunity one day? Maybe. He's shown some flaws as well. The Giants were at their best a year ago when Tommy DeVito was under center, not Daniel Jones. By the way, you want to add to that? The Giants were better with Tyrod Taylor than they were with Daniel Jones. Same team, same crappy offensive line circumstances, same weapons around them, but yet with all the same circumstances, Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito did more with the Giants offense than Daniel Jones. Show me the evidence otherwise. I'm not saying they've had a better career than Daniel Jones, although I would argue that they certainly could. And Daniel Jones has made the playoffs and won a road playoff game, and we gave him credit for that. It's also taken now 6 years to figure out what he is. For some people, not me. I decided what he is. He's not good enough. End of story. You think he's worth $40 million? You want to keep saying the same thing every year? Blame everybody else. It's not you. It's everybody else. It's the offensive line. It's the lack of weapons. It's the injuries. He'll be fine. It's everything else. Every year, it's the same story. Every year, it's the same thing. It's never Daniel Jones. Except it is Daniel Jones. And the sooner the Giants find that out, the better they are moving forward. Unfortunately, it's taken them a lot longer than it should. And you could laugh all you want, and you could talk about offensive line this and offensive line that. This is not 1 year. It's not 2 years. We're talking about going into year 6. Year 6. Tell me why, instead of calling and embarrassing yourself and acting like an idiot, giggling on the phone like a 3-year-old schoolgirl, instead of giggling on the phone, make a point. How can you defend Daniel Jones? You can't. And that's why you come on laughing and talking about the offensive line. Because when Jones has been healthy, he hasn't been good enough. End of story.